Hi, so I'm back. Let's start reading from chapter 16. We again read till it's around 30 minutes over here. So let's start. Chapter 16. The Foster Family. The Marrow Fair is a new kind of market, Lady Belasco explained. Picnic dinner was over and everyone who had tasted the Chernobyl honey was still alive. I was following her away from the lemon grove, back up the yellow top road, the way I'd come. It's an experiment, a place for new ideas, new tools, new fun. What is this place, though? I asked. Oh, back when the base was operational, this was a munitions depot. Don't you love it? Long and skinny, like a mirror image ferry building, like an underworld ferry building. Yes, I could see why the space appealed to Lily Velasco. As above, so below. They kept missiles down here, she continued, lifted them up through there. She pointed back towards the skylight, into planes, I guess. Don't worry, the floor isn't radioactive anymore. There was a lot of weird light for a place that wasn't radioactive. Those are grow rooms, all pink LEDs. Apparently, plants absorb the portion of the serum more effectively. Ask Kianata, he'll tell you more. Velasco pointed out workstations as we passed them. That's the coffee bar. Naz Khalil runs it. He was green light coffee's first barista. Over there, they make a new kind of smoothie. Look closely before you try one. Around that corner, cricket cookies. I can smell them. Mmm. We arrived at a place close to the door where I'd entered, far from the light of the lemon grove. There was a workstation here, shadowed and bare. We are here. This is where I want you and your robot. There had been a misunderstanding. I don't have a robot. I just work on them. Velasco groped the depot's wall to find a switch that brought cold fluorescent tubes sparkling to life above the workstation. It was outfitted with the same basic ec- accoutrements as the rest a countertop, some wire shelves, an industrial sink, and it boasted, in addition, a ping pong table with no net, one folding chair currently folded, and finally an uh, elephantine bread oven, grey and stoic, the size of a small car. Velasco gave me a frank look. A market in the Bay Area needs at minimum three things. It needs fancy coffee, beer, honey, and sourdough bread. Nars has been here from the start, and he roasts his beans with lasers. Gracie, get me my honey. You might be my baker. But, like I said, this is a place for new tools. She smiled. I want robot bread. I don't have a robot. She looked at me innocently. Get one. Why can't I just bake bread normally? Go to coma if you want to do that. I need you to do something different here. The new ideas, they're always. Have you seen cricket flour? It looks like flour. Once you explain it, people get interested. But as we approach our opening, I'm mindful that we need for a that we are mindful of a need for a bit more pizzazz. You, Baker, you could provide this pizzazz. I had never before been invited to provide the pizzazz. Get a robot, and this spot is yours. You'll have the exclusive Sardo franchise. The market runs previews Wednesday mornings. Look, you're right by the door. You'll sell out. Get a robot. My disgruntlement dissolved on contact with the problem, the way it had hundreds of times at Crowley and General Dexterity. Maybe that was my great weakness. If a task was even mildly challenging, my sense of injustice drained away, and I simply worked quietly until I was done. I guess I learned that in school. The Alphantine bread oven's manufacturer was etched on the thin lip of the metal above. The baking voice, it was Phosphine from Munich. I looked it up at Global Gluten. The depot had very fast wireless internet network named Cruciferous and discovered that the oven was considered a boring but reliable workhouse of industrial bakeries. But Fosterman definitely did not provide pizzazz. It took me a bit of poking around to find an open baked pastry stocked with staples including flour and salt. The later diamond crystal, which made me feel for a moment like I was something in a loop. I mixed the flour with water and fed the clemency starter, watched it bubble and fizz. It was late, midnight, but I was wide awake bored by curiosity. We see about we would see about pizzazz. I mixed some sourdough and let it to rest. I stood and faced the forceps. The controls were all in German, but how difficult could they be? Very difficult, it turned out. It took me 10 minutes to reduce the combination that commanded ignition. When I did, the deep whoomph of burners inside sent me leaping backward. As I turned the door, I paid special attention to what my joints were doing. I imagined myself a general dexterity robot arm. I made low, rumbling robot arm noises. A smell wafted over from farther up and up the concourse, fishy and marine. I heard the clink of glass. I watched a sheet of steam rise in the distance. I saw a woman in a short lab coat, stunningly beautiful, dark skinned, with darker slashes under her eyes, wandering slowly up the yellow tape road, carrying a bright blue mug, her lips moving slightly, twitching at moments into a smile. Then suddenly she spun in place and sprinting back to wherever she had been working. I knew that feeling. While I waited for the door to rise, I wandered back to the lemon grove at the coffee bar. The barista Nas alternated his attention between a ring upon which a laser tracked slowly across a scattered bed of coffee beans, the roasty smell rising, and a laptop that showed a long playlist. Any requests? He asked. It was only then that I became aware of the depot soundtrack, currently at ambient swell, so deep it could have been the far off foghorns that guarded the Golden Gate. Was it the far off foghorns? She calls herself microclimate, Naz explained. She samples the foghorns up close, then she plays with the sound into drums, voices, everything. So Nas chose the Marofer's music. The acoustics in here, he began, and then words failed him, and he just shook his head in awe. I sat with my cappuccino in the folding armchair behind this alongside the ping pong table. The acoustics of the concourse carried not only Naz's playlist, but also scraps of sound from other workstations. I heard low beeps, sharp scrapes, muttered conferences, and the occasional laugh. The depot was wreathed in gentle effort. It percolated. My dough had risen, so I formed a loaf. Technically, I should have let it set, but I was impatient. I slung it into the Fosterton's top baking bay and commanded the stoic monofill to bake. The Fosterton had, in addition to its temperature dial, a humidity control, and I'd never controlled an oven's humidity before. I made my best guess and resolved to check global gluten later. Then, through cloudy glass, I watched the solitary loaf bake. It felt transgressive, a process previously private, protected by the walls, three bricks thick, now starkly visible. Nas must have switched albums because the foghorn faded to nothing and was replaced by electronic drums. Slow taps blurred by the width and breadth of the concourse into massive echoing thuds. I imagined the loading cranes at the port of Oakland lifting their legs to plod across the airfield above. Inside the Fosterpen, the loaf inflated, the crust darkened, cracks formed, a face emerged wearing just the faintest smile. I looked around. I liked the spot, right next to the door. I liked the folding chair. I liked the ping pong table. I liked the pink light and the cool soundtrack and the wandering geniuses. It couldn't be that difficult to acquire a robot arm from view. So, you asked about the startup. The masks have many stories explaining how it came to us, and they all contradict each other. Every family maintains their own startup, always in a ceramic crock, like the one I gave you. Sometimes the crocks are very old. That one was pretty new. I bought it in Daly City. Here in Edinburgh, in the Little Mass neighborhood, when I go walking in the morning, through all the second story windows, I can hear the starters singing. So that's the end of chapter 16. We will start with chapter 17, roof form, in a second. Roof form. I told Peter I wanted to borrow a robot arm so I could teach it to bake bread. I don't eat bread, he reminded me. That was well established. I didn't think the arms could do kitchen stuff, Peter said. They can't, not yet. I can figure it out. He pressed his lips together, and I saw the muscles of his jaw working. This was Peter's being a manager face. It meant he was figuring out how to help you. There's never enough arms, and task allocates them. But if you really think you can do it, that would be a big deal, right? It would be, we could pitch it to Andre. For all his reality bending intensity, our CEO was accessible and approachable. He ate his lunch in the cafeteria with the rest of us, sitting with a different group every day. You could tell where he was without looking because Andre's table always laughed a little too loud. Peter and I went to lunch early. We migrated between the stations of the cafeteria slowly, smoothie to salad to waffle maker, circling vulture like, waiting for Andre to appear. Peter looked very suspicious, circling with just a single green Tetra bag. When Andre appeared, Peter hooted an alert, and I tracked the CEO out the trail of my eye. It took him a long time to fill his tray, every step interrupted by a greeting, an admonition, a whispered report. I have never watched him this closely. Passing through the cafeteria, he felt like a wake of key eyed expressions, smiles, and grimaces. He was a walking amphetamine. Peter and I loitered together at the Paella station. My pulse accelerated. Finally, Andre selected a seat at a half empty table. Go, 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 Peter commanded. We sprinted across the cafeteria, Peter angling neatly between the dexterous, me smashing into them to bring our butts, his sliding, mine crashing into the table's last available chairs. Two cold eyed rats had been vectoring for the same spot. I glared at them and sounded a warning hiss. Peter, Andre boomed, and Louis. He looked around the table. Do you all know Peter and Louis? Peter runs control, and Louis works on proprioception. Very cool stuff. Andre knew everyone's name and role. Everyone's. It was said he used flashcards. Peter and I planned to begin with 3 to 5 minutes of small talk before easing into our overture, but looking at the group of dexterous we had joined, I understood suddenly that everyone at the table had exactly the same plan. We were not the only birds of prey in this cafeteria. The eggs, I blurted. Andre raised an eyebrow. I want to solve the egg problem, I said. I mean, cooking, specifically baking. Andre lifted a curl of fennel from the top of his salad and popped it into his mouth, where he chewed it thoughtfully. Peter daintily removed the seal from his Tetra Pak. The other dexterous growled. We have been working on that for a long time, Andre said. Right, but I know the control code base and I know the task. An integrated approach, Peter interjected. I nodded. We had practiced task and control together. Peter couldn't help himself, but if it works, control gets the credit. We had the rest of the argument ready to go. An appeal to the skunk works spirit, a pre approved interjection from Peter praising my most recent bug fix, but none of it was needed. Andre nodded, picked up his phone, and tapped a short message. Okay, you can have a refurbished arm. Louis, this is your job now. Peter, you oversee. Peter slurped affirmatively. Great, make it work. I told him thank you and then that I was going to sit somewhere else to actually eat my lunch. Andre laughed, followed by everyone else at the table too loudly, and waved me away. Later, I crossed Townsend to meet my new robot at the Task Acquisition Center. I walked through the rows of arms, watched them lift boxes and knock over glass bottles. I walked all the way to the back of the building to a work area set up against the far wall where several arms stood slack, all of them marked with white red stickers that said refurb. A woman was sitting at a small desk there in the shadows, Deborah Palmer Grill, queen of the training floor. DPG narrowed her eyes. So I hear you are going to solve the egg problem. I nodded slowly. We have broken a lot of eggs in here. I am going to try something different. More eggs than you can imagine, garbage bins full of shells, full of them. I'm going to bring you a loaf of bread, I said with more confidence than I actually possessed. It's going to be perfect. And it's going to be beyond, and it's going to be baked by this fellow right here. I patted the closest arm. Not that one, DPG said. That's one's new. The one on the end, that's Vitruvian 3 from a year ago. Fill out this form. They used that one at the CDC. So if I were you, I'd wipe it down extra good. The arm arrived on the airfield borne on a pallet, mummified in plastic wrap, delivered by a courier waiting confusedly on the asphalt, whose relief showed clearly when we appeared from in the inside control tower. Lily Velasco and I extracted the Vitruvian, released the brakes on its wheel base, and brought it slowly down the vehicle ramp into the depot, Velasco cackling the whole way. So that's okay from view. It is strange that a Sourdough Chapters sings. It didn't seem strange when I was a child. I am now 23 years old. How old are you? And yes, I understand that most starters don't behave this way, but I still don't think the singing is the most remarkable thing about it. I am not being evasive. This is the truth. Every time I feed my family starter, I feel a sense of awe. Because from your starter to mine, to my mother's and her father's, it's all the same stuff. And it goes back to a very long way. Immortality is stranger than singing, if you ask me. Anyway, Leopold says that it's a weird thing with the CO2 bubbles. In other news, I have officially received permission from Shaman to share one of his new tracks. It's attached. That's the end of chapter 17. We will start chapter 18 now, which is called Cathedrals. The Marrow Fair's orientation wasn't as involved as I'd expected. Given that I was being granted space in a repurposed munitions depot slightly below sea level, Lily Velasco showed me the bathrooms, told me there were emergency exits in most, but not all directions, then pressed a flashlight into my palm. She explained that the depot connected to the other bygone facilities that were not fully mapped. But really, she said, nothing's radioactive anymore. I resolved to orient myself. The concourse was the spine of the Marrow Fair, and the lemon groove, with the skylight above, its central chakra. Beyond the portals opened not into the pink light but darkness, and long corridors exploring them, I discovered a mushroom grotto where dense clusters of broad brimmed fungi protruded from transparent plastic sacks bulging with dark dirt. The cricket farm. I did not see the bugs, but I heard them chittering enormously in the dark. I turned and retreated. A single lemon, forlorn and desiccated, a ladder that rose to hatch. When I poked my head through, I found myself nearly nose to nose with one of the goats grazing on the airfield. It regarded me with the flat skepticism. Goats only ever give side eye. An enormous vehicle ramp, wide enough for whatever kind of truck carries nuclear missiles. I hugged its gentle rise to find myself at the back of the algebra hangar with its gleaming wax. Brewers rolled kegs on dollies and bantered about the recent performance of the Golden State Warriors. I wandered out through the brewery into the airfield and saw the goats again in the distance. I went back down and followed the concourse to its terminus, a blank concrete wall with another grey door marked with a stencil and unlocked by the boom key. Still too skinny. The door opened onto the glittering water and the night sky and a tiny concrete pier, at which a wide-bellied boat waited with a few passengers, familiar from inside, already seated in her stern. I returned to San Francisco on the slow, easy-going craft and learned from its pilot that he operated a daily ferry service for the Marrow Fair. He gave me a slip of paper on which his schedule was printed alongside his name, Carl, as well as the name of his boat, the Omebushi. His schedule started at 6 a.m. Is that the earliest? I asked. You need me to go earlier? I told him I might. He nodded gravely. Just means more hours for me. And the bushy, I'll tell Velasco. Later I found my round-cheeked neighbor from the picnic table. His full name was Horace Portaccio, and he was the Marrow Fair's librarian. He also compiled the weekly e-newsletter. In a prime spot just across the yellow tape road from the lemon trees, he tended his own dark grove of bookshelves, and beside them a field of legal boxes which held thousands of menus from restaurants, famous and obscure. Whenever I passed Horace's collection, there was something flipping through the menus with the furious intensity of DJ digging in the crates. When I introduced myself again, and explained I'd officially joined the market, Horace raised a finger. Just a moment, then disappeared into his bookshelves. He emerged again with a cheering armload of books. It seemed impossible that he had gathered them so quickly. Did he have them automatic stacks perforated, waiting the right recipient? He sat the enumerate the volumes. He Here we have a reproduction of a pamphlet printed by the Bakers Guild in London around, let's see, 1600. Very nice. And a history of food. It's quite contemporary, he said, with the palpable regret. But there's a good bit on baking. And here, oh yes, these. He plopped the folder onto the table, are Edward Brown's notes towards the Tasajara bread book. Lovely handwriting, don't you think? Keep those pages together. And of course, you must read Ibn Battuta. Here is the classic Tassinum Sanitalis, an edition printed around 1500. There's a section where he strongly recommends whole wheat, and I, for one, am inclined to obey. And of course, he flipped through Tassinum Sanitatis, searching for a page, and when he found it, he spun the book around to show me that, Horace said, is the first identifiable published illustration of a carrot. He was beaming. The book looked very old. I didn't want to take it. Oh, you must, he said in an absolutely foundational document. I squinted at the text below the illustration. I can't read Latin, Horace sobbed. All right, I'll keep this one, but take the rest. The next day, I rode the Omibushi from San Francisco to Alameda, used my bone key token to enter through the bay door, loaded the master development branch of ARM OS into my refurbished Vitruvian 3, and spent the next 6 hours teaching it to stir. Sorry. Sorry again. With my fingers on the elbows, I led it through the motion. This was task segmentation. Whenever I paused and said, like that, the Vitruvian emitted a whispering beak of acknowledgement, recording not only the motion but also its understanding of the context. What it saw through its cameras, visible and thermal, and felt through its presence pressure sensor. After finishing the sequence, I stepped back and spoke again. Now you try. And so it came to pass that a late model Vitruvian, loaded with a master development branch of ARM OS, reenacted all the honors of my first attempts at baking, except this arm was 5 feet long, with strength commensurate, and every error was multiplied. It sent the bowl clanging across the concrete, leaving a powdery trail of unmixed flour. I did in time teach it to stir, and we progressed briefly to kneading and shaping. But then it was launching discs of dough through the air like buoy artillery. The arm was strong. They went a long way. One of the discs missed the coffee bar by inches. One of them I never found. For now, we would stick to stirring. The flux of preview customers in the Marrow Fair when the doors opened the following Wednesday morning was immense. Had these people all been waiting on the airfield jostling with the goats? Between 8 and 9 a.m., the depot transformed from a spaceship into a farmer's market on a spaceship. The customers looked for the most part very rich. I saw the toothsome plaids of tech wealth, and I saw the supple red leather handbags of something older. The customers came gliding through the control tower door, none in any rush, some walking alone, others in pairs or small groups, whispering among themselves. I hadn't yet taught the Vitruvian to do anything of value, so my workstation stood quiet and dark while they passed. Horace approached me. Shall we wander? He asked. It's always interesting to see what everyone is offering. There was Gracie with her Chernobyl honey, the cave dwelling mushroom monger, a man and a woman dissenting smoothies that appeared to have things swimming inside them. Orly the elf presided over a table piled with cheeses, some dusty pale, some brown like leather, and some veined not only with blue but also bright green and hot pink. The larger wheels she had carved into pieces at irregular angles so the resulting hunks looked like soft pad jewels. There was a workstation selling algorithmically optimized bagels, their outsides perfectly smooth like computer renderings. A printed banner said new bagel. It was surprisingly well designed. There was a man selling barramundi that lived the whole lives in watery tubes extending deep pose corridors. Next to him, another man cleaned those fish and fried them into tacos on the spot, filling tortillas made from cricket flour and topping them with slaw made from cabbage brown in the pink light rooms. Horace and I requested two tacos each and agreed that the collaboration was impeccable. We came to the cricket bakery and Horace greeted its proprietor, Anita. This is Louis, a baker of great skill. She employs a robot. To me, Horace said, you must try one of Anita's cookies. It was light brown, threaded with darker grades. There are cave paintings in Spain 30,000 years ago old that depict the collection and consumption of insects. He popped a cookie into his mouth. When we moved on, I asked him, so, who are these customers? If one of them says, sure, Anita, I'll take a dozen boxes of buck cookies. Forrest leaned closer, clearly delighted to be conspiring. I believe we have here representatives of many of the greatest restaurants in the world San Francisco, New York, London, and Tokyo. Who, bet, who better to assess the market's progress? They bring the findings to the diners. Perhaps they report back to Mr. Marrow as well. We approached the lemon grove. Just ahead, a young woman held court before several of the customers. She was the one I had seen the night, walking the quiet concourse carrying a mug of coffee and inward look. A nutritionally complete food product, she was saying. The stitching on her lab coat named her Dr. Jana Mitra. The woman was passing around a platter stacked with blocks of apparently edible matter. Each was wrapped in silvery green paper, but the matter itself was as white as a grub. The blocks resembled ghostly Rice Krispies treats. The customers moved along, one whispering to another. Jana Mitra's grace followed them. She chewed her lip a little. Hello, Dr. Mitra. Horace said, this is Lois. She has a robot. Jana said hello, her eyes still following the customers and absently offered the platter to us. I lifted a slab and gave it an exploratory sniff. It smelled like dirt. Not in a bad way. You said it's nutritionally complete. Is this anything like slurry? Jana's gaze snapped around. No, she said, her face taut. This is lembas. It's much better. Have you tried slurry? When I told her that in fact I subsisted on it, she looked surprised. Lembas is a very different concept. I'll explain, but please taste it first. I took a bite, expecting the slippery chemical tang that I knew from slurry. Instead, the taste was warm and definite. The closest comparison was an immense starter tart, but it went beyond tart. In the substance, the balance of sponge to the crisp was perfected. I ate the whole piece. Shena smiled. You like it? It tasted great, and the initial texture was top notch. But once inside my mouth, it seemed to surrender to my saliva too easily. I could feel it adhering to my molars. It's good, I said, but swallowing. It's a bit sticky. Forrest mumbled in agreement. He was struggling to unstick his jaws. That's the new enzymes, Jana said darkly. I should make a note. She scrambled back to her workstation, typed something into her laptop, and turned back. Voice just supposed I started. Wait. I squeezed my teeth with my tongue. What's it supposed to taste like? Jana Mitra's gaze sharpened. Nothing. It's not intended to be a stimulation. I think food should taste like what it is, don't you? And what this is a super nutritious cellulosic suspension manufactured in situ by a company of microbes. Jenna was, I decided, very impressive. It's got all the vitamins, minerals, and macronutrients you need, she said. All in the right ratios, plenty of protein, tons of fiber. Tons. Horace had regained his power of speech. Dr. Mitra, you are the heir of Pasteur, he explained, mistress of microbes. I believe Bruno Latour would be tickled by this. I have a book of his you should read. Jenna turned to the machine that stood behind her, occupying most of the workstation, an enormous steel cylinder with a bright swirly logo on its breast, from which burst tangles of pipes and cables. One large pipe connected to the cylinder to a wide beige box with the plain "Who, me?" look that all biotech gear seemed to share. "This is my bioreactor," she said, accents of pride evident on both my and bioreactor. She looked at me, ready to make a point. As you might know, slurry is assembled from various organic precursors, basically thrown together in a blender. My voice made it clear she did not respect mere blending. My Her voice made it clear. My lembas cakes are manufactured whole by living microorganisms. I pointed to the shiny cylinder. Right, there in the tank? Bioreactor, yes. I grew the cultures here, and they assemble the cakes here. She opened one of her huge cabinets, which was populated by racks that looked like shallow muffin trays. In each one, a lembas cake was blooming, the light, airy structure rising like scaffolding. Around their edges, they glistened wetly. The form recalls a Breton cake, Horace mused. It almost has the finest of a Peruvian emmet. I think of them as microbial cathedrals, Jenna said. I wondered if that comparison made her the architect of the or the why not just leave it like liquid like slurry? I asked. Jenna ticked off the reasons. Mouthfeel, dental health, market research indicates people associate liquid superfoods with pessimistic science fiction. That was a good point. And I should clarify, I don't want people to eat lembas all day, every day, she said. It's your quick lunch. It's what you eat in the car. It solves food security because once I get the microbial community stabilized, we'll be able to produce it literally anywhere. Trust me, I have no desire to replace all of this. She lifted her hands to encompass the marrow fare. It's fast food. I want to replace. And all the other terrible stuff people eat when they get impatient. Starbucks breakfast sandwiches, I said ruefully. Curse those breakfast sandwiches, Horace muttered. Jenna offered the platter again. Another one? I ran my tongue around the teeth, found bits of cathedrals still stuck there. I'm fine for now. Come back for the next batch, she said. I'm going to get those enzymes dialed in. It's almost ready. Almost. Almost. Almost ready. From the oven. Right now, I am making spicy soup, the kind you like. Shaman brought his laptop into the kitchen. Sharia told him he was being a weird hermit, and he's hunched over the table composing. I can hear the oons oons in his headphones. As for my mother, she's rolling noodles on the countertop, humming while she does it. It always begins with the humming. Shaman and I joke about this. It sneaks up on her. In another minute, she'll be singing with her full voice. She can't help herself. Right now, she's humming her favorite song, which is about leaving places behind and how it's sad but also happy. It's very nice. Louis, the picture you sent, the robot with the mixing bowl, it inspired me. I think I've gotten complacent with my cooking. I need to experiment more. This morning, I separated a bit of my starter and mixed some Fresno chili into its food. It died instantly. But I'm not giving up. If you want to experiment too, we could compare notes. For one thing, I recommended feeding your starter back better flour. It's hard to get good flour in the US, but it makes a big difference. My stockpile of Fresno chilies is dwindling, by the way. So that's the end of chapter 18. We will start with new chapters later because we've already hit the 30 minutes mark. So thank you for listening. I can see like the half of the book is done. This is the part that we've read, and this is the part that we still have to read. So half of the book is exactly done. See you soon later then. Bye bye.